Welcome to Couch Talk. Today on the show, we'll meet a driven and outspoken woman who doesn't shy away from a good debate.
Hi, my name is Melanie Joly, and I'm a lawyer, an entrepreneur, recently an author, and I'm also an ex-politician. I'm passionate about our society, our political system, and I'm strongly convinced, and I have the strong belief, that we all have an impact on our world, on our environment, on our community.
Melanie, thank you so much for being on the couch today.
Thank you, Cindy, for the invitation.
And I appreciate you sending me the book. I've been reading it. And I have to admit, when I first received the book, I was a little skeptical. Oh my God, I have to read a political book. But I was pleasantly surprised. It's such a light read, and it's optimistic, and it's hopeful, and it's young, and it's, you know, an interesting take on the world of politics, more importantly, the future of politics. Was this the goal when you wrote it?
Well, the goal is clearly to show that we can innovate in politics, because it's quite absurd to think that, you know, we innovate in science and business and arts, but not necessarily in politics, and that ultimately people have an impact on their society and can have an impact on the political system, and that we can change the political system. Right. So it's un cri du cœur, like I would say in French, a cry from the heart to attract people towards the political world, for them to really become politicians.
Right, right. And I feel like you've done an amazing job bringing that in the book, because
thank you.
I'm not really involved in politics. I have to admit, I'm not the biggest follower. I do vote, but I'm not the biggest follower. But reading this, it made me want to learn more about politics, and thinking about how can I get involved? How can I have an impact? Because Melanie Joly is telling me I can have an impact. I can have an impact on my community. I can have an impact in Montreal. And I think other people reading it, not necessarily just young people, just anyone in general,
for sure.
if they have something in Montreal, in politics, around them that they want to change, or that they're unhappy with, or maybe that they love, if they love the city so much, they can get involved and they can make a difference.
Yes, and not only that, if we do not get involved, there's really a risk of us going through a lot of conflicts.
Right.
So it's really our responsibility, but I don't want to be like a mother, or you know, just saying we have to, we need to. No, it's how can I say, it's a great empowerment type of experience, and that's why I wish people get involved and have the conviction, the belief that they can, that the idea they have can be realized, and the political world can be ready for them.
Right. You're obviously very passionate about politics. Did you always know that you wanted to be a politician?
I always valued the political engagement. I come from a family that my great-grandfather, which I never had the chance to meet, was mayor of Saint-Canute, and the other one was mayor of Saint-Scholastique, which became Mirabel.
Okay.
And then my grandmother used to tell me about you know, her dad and her and the city, how it worked, and so she had that passion, and my dad was involved, but not you know, directly as a politician. So and I did student association politics, and I really enjoyed it. So I always thought one day, but I never knew which form. I was very much inspired by people like Pierre-Éliott Trudeau or René Lévesque, or the great minds of the 50s, 60s, and that had created a political hub political think tanks, and that's why I started along with 2 other people, Génération d'Idées later on.
Right.
So yes to your question, but not. I didn't know how or where
Right.
exactly.
So when you were practicing law, at that point, were you already thinking about the political career, or that came much later on? Because you started as a lawyer.
Yes.
Right?
It was a dream. It wasn't, and I never had a clear career plan.
Okay.
I had dreams, but I was always listening to my heart, listening to my intuition. And I changed many times what I was doing. You know, I was a lawyer. I left law, the legal practice. I went into journalism, and then from there I went into communications, and then later on politics. And now I'm back to business. So it's, for me, it's much more about listening to yourself,
Right.
and what you like, and then rather sticking on to a plan. I don't believe in that.
Okay, you don't believe in the plan.
No, well, I believe
Follow
in
your
the
heart type of thing.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And you were mentioning that after politics, you decided to go into business. How do you compare the 2 worlds? Do you find that it's kind of a natural transition from politics to business?
No, it's not, because the reality is I wasn't elected.
Okay.
So Cindy, you have to deal with the fact that not being elected is a failure to a certain extent. That although it went very well, and I was happy
Right.
with the results on November 2013, I wasn't elected. So you have to. Politicians go through a desert, and they have to reinvent themselves,
Right.
and they have to, there's such a huge amount of adrenaline, and that hope, feeling,
Right.
that there's necessarily a detox afterwards. And so my detox was writing the book, although I had started to write it before launching the campaign, and it was also to gather again my energy, become positive again,
Right.
Understanding the emotions I had gone through, and then relaunching new projects. And that's why the business world was just perfect to do that, because
Right.
it's the best environment to take an idea and really execute it, realize it.
Right. But even in the business world now, you still bring the political component. I mean, you've been doing a lot of talks and conferences that involve both entrepreneurship and politics.
Yes.
Right?
Well, of course, I have the creation of a municipal political party, and running to become mayor was really an entrepreneurial venture.
Okay.
Because we started from scratch. We had no money. We had no candidates at first. And we had.
That sounds like an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, nobody knew us. So we had to do a lot in a very small amount of time. But for me, and being an entrepreneur is much more state of mind than really
agree.
just being in charge of a business or founding a business.
Right.
It's really, you can be a social entrepreneur, having a really great impact on your community. You can be an entrepreneur in the arts world, and or like you were an entrepreneur in the media world.
Right.
So it's that's
building.
why.
It's about building something, you
Yeah.
know, starting with an idea and seeing it grow.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And when you do it, because you had a talk at Dawson recently about entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Is that a bit what you talk about? The concept of following your dreams and starting from nothing to something?
Well, at first, the first speeches I was giving about entrepreneurship were not about entrepreneurship.
Okay.
They were about failure, actually, because I started with friends, and I participated in Fail Camp.
Okay.
That was last winter, and it was about failures in science, in the arts world, in business, in technology, and I was talking about politics. And it was an amazing experience.
I can imagine. Most people talk about their success.
Yeah.
It's rare that you have people broadcasting their failures.
Yeah, but
That must have been a lot of fun.
It was fun, but it was very emotional because when you talk about the things that went, not greatly in your life, it's you expose your vulnerability. But I think being vulnerable makes you connect to other people more easily, and you learn a lot about experiences that are not necessarily successes. The important is not doing the same failure over and over again.
Right. I agree. But I think that's so inspirational to meet other people who have had failures and disappointments and see how they recuperated, how they reinvented themselves. The world doesn't end after a failure. And often before you reach a success, you have a couple of failures before that point,
Of course, because you learn through the process. But also, when I talk about failure, is I talk about emotional intelligence.
Okay.
And the fact of being able to deal with stress and anxiety, and basically saying it's okay if you have an anxiety problem, but the most important thing is really to know yourself, and accept that you can go through it, and that a lot of people how can I say, live with anxiety. And that in that context, I was involved with Margaret Trudeau for the Run for Women recently. And I was talking about anxiety. She was talking about bipolarity. But ultimately, I want to develop new leadership models, new feminine leadership models, because what I'm saying is, I don't believe in the fact that the leadership models we have now, which are usually more an older man, which is very in control, and doesn't necessarily have that, how can I say, that looks perfect. Well, I don't believe in that. And I think also that we're in a leadership crisis, and people contest leadership. People are seeking new leaders. And by talking about emotions and talking about maybe the reality behind leadership will enable people to adopt and create a new leadership model.
Right. And for the people to connect also with these leaders.
Of course. Yes.
I agree. I think diversity in general is needed.
Yes.
From gender to age to ethnicity, I think just more diversity in general would help with that. I definitely agree. Well, it sounds like, because I was going to ask you what advice you'd give to a woman, dealing with these, but I think you kind of said it already, just learning to accept if you have some kind of anxiety issue or something like that, learning to deal with it, to cope and accept, and there's no need to pretend, because other people have the same issues.
I think people are seeking authenticity, and that will be a strength as a leader. And I think also that it's very important to have a lot of good self-confidence, but also being able to doubt, and not be perfect. Nobody is, and you learn through the process, and the process is more important than the end, and that's life, because we all die. It's ours in the.
It's too early to be morbid. Well, I'm really happy to see that even though you've left the political sphere, you're still so involved in impacting others around you. And, just bringing change. I mean, it feels like your campaign is still going on, but in a different way, you know, and it's very optimistic. And I love that. I think it's inspiring. I think a lot of women are doing really great things right now. And it's good to hear things like that, where it continues to encourage people to just get involved in general, not just politics, but just get involved in their communities.
And when I was talking about leadership models for women, but also for men, for them to be in touch with how they are and their feelings, their emotions, and to be okay with the their own authenticity. That's important.
Right. Well, it seems like you've learned a lot over the past few years. I mean, if you were to look back now, knowing everything that you know now, what would you say to the Melanie Joly of like 10 years ago?
I would say to her, it's funny, I was at McGill last night, and one of the students, they were, actually they were alumni, asked me the same question.
Oh, really?
And I would say to her, live every minute. Stop being too much into performance and thinking about the future. You know, live every minute and enjoy it. And that will stop your anxiety, and that will make you much more in connection with your community and your better you.
Right.
So I think if I had known that, I think I would have lived through my 20s and early 30s in a much more happier way. Yeah.
And peaceful way.
Yes,
I can say.
exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
Okay. Well, amazing. I look forward to seeing your next projects.
Yeah,
and
me too.
Hopefully, and hopefully I can make it to the next conference you give, especially if you do more of those failure, how to deal with failure. I'm like, I want to see this.
I'll remember that.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and for coming on the couch today.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And thank you for bringing me this book.
you.
It's been a good read, and I hope other people read it. And thank you to you guys for joining us on another episode of Couch Talk. And make sure to tune in for the next episode. Bye.
Wish to see you, wish to see you, made all the colors. Wish to see you, wish to see you, made all the colors.